1926. Actually, I think I have a slide in here that shows the county recorder's subdivision map, and we'll take a look at that, at the date on that. I think it's October.
Is it okay to dim the lights?
Yes, please. So can everybody see the screen from where you are? Okay, we're just kind of, yeah, I don't want to stand in your way. So this is the town, as it looks today on, from the satellite image, from Google Earth. And, a couple of things that, I just cropped it to the town, but not just the town, because we're in a setting that's really important to all of this story that we're gonna tell about our history and that we do tell. Mona Lake is in part of the corner here in the upper left. There's an airstrip out there, and later on we'll look at some other pictures and you'll notice there's no airstrip in those pictures. It came eventually. There's an industrial kind of a look off to the right, and green spots, Levining Canyon running down towards the lake, and a little bit of the Sierra Hill climbing there. So this is going to be out in the dark trying to find this buttons. I'm going to start this by recognizing that there's prehistory before the town. They're not going to tell. We spend a lot of time with this historical society talking about all of the history of this region, but mining was pretty important. This is Bodie. Other mines back in towards the latter couple of last decades of the 19th century. And because of that mining, there were things going on in the basin, and agriculture, ranches were established, homesteads to grow things, to market to the mining communities. The local people, the native people who had been here for all time before that, this slice of history that we're going to focus on, had gone through this late 19th century terrible impact on their culture and their way of life here, and yet they're part of our story too, and still are today. And important that we talk about that and recognize the Kuzetica as part of the town of Levining and part of this history. So in terms of agriculture and the ranches, that's not in the town, except for, as you see, there were some very interesting dairies right close by here, and not too far over the hill and outside the limits of the town. This is where a number of the ranches were that were really important. But this new century starts. This is an interesting picture. I love this picture. A number of things about it. It's taken in 1923, before there's a town here in Levining. It's established. The Inyo National Forest was established in 1908. So it's been around a while, and it wasn't called the Inyo National Forest there. It was the Mono National Forest at that early time. And look at the sign. Let me read it to you if it's not too big on your screen. There's that word Levining as one word, no space between Lee and Vining. Ranger station. It's district ranger's headquarters, and you can get information about camping and fishing. Recreation maps are obtainable, and if they're open. That's a joke about today.
Some things never. Do you know where that building was?
That's right where the ranger station, in that piece of property somewhere there. No, I don't know exactly. You know where the ranger station is in Lower Levining Canyon? Yeah, right there. So the word Levining, I want to talk about that because we're going to get to that becoming the name of a new subdivision town. This map was prepared in 1861, and so what going on in the 1850s was mining in the hills to the north, and this guy named Leroy Vining showed up and didn't get really very successful in what he was doing as a miner, but he came over into this canyon where what we now call Levining Creek. And on this map, you can identify right in the center, it says Vining's Rancho in the rectangle there, that's his property. And at that rancho, the advertisements or the stories in the newspaper about this is that Leroy Vining would provide food grown locally. He would provide a place for tired miners to come and rest and just take it easy, take a vacation from their hard work. And there's Vinings River, they call it there, coming down towards Mono Lake at the time. The other thing, just to point out that's neat on the map, is that there's a dash line that comes running up through where Vinings Rancho is, runs along the west shore of Mono Lake. Of course, the places where people travel are mostly dictated by topography and where you could move easily. Like that's a trail, and that would be a Kazitica Trail originally, and it was a trail where people were moving up and down. Okay, so the name Lee Vining was in use at that time. Later on, one more thing then starts happening, and it starts happening really in the early first years of the 20th century, in the early 1900s. So this picture was taken where the Tioga Lodge is today. It was called Hammond's Store at the time. This is 1905, and travelers were starting to travel on what was officially designated by the legislature as El Camino Sierra at the time. We didn't have Highway 395, the US 395 highway designation yet. So after that happened, that designation, some car clubs from down south of us got together and drove El Camino Sierra, and they're crossing Rush Creek on a bridge right there. I think I could sit down since I don't really matter too much if you see me here. And this is getting close to the time for the town and why the town was coming along. 1922 is the picture on the left where old cars they were new cars. So cars are going up the Tioga Road unpaved. It wouldn't be paved completely until in the 1930s. This gathering of cars parked at, you see the stone pillar. I wish somebody from the Yosemite, one of our neighbors runs the gate there at the park. But that's the entrance up at the Tioga Pass itself.
We can see better if you sit down.
You see better if I can sit down? Okay. Well, thanks. I need to know that.
Feel better?
So this is what the highway along the edge of Mono Lake looked like for a long time. This is 1932. And I mentioned that El Camino Sierra, and it would get that other designation of a US highway number as 395. But it was also called, for a long time, many people referred to this road as Three Flags Highway because the highway is 395 all the way up to the north to the boundary with Canada. And it's all the way to the south, or it was. Numbers have changed down towards San Diego, but to Mexico. And so, but anyway, because of all the traffic of cars, there was a need to give them places to stop, get gas, and refuel, and rest, and maybe stay overnight. Like there were things. Some of that was offered by Hammond Station. Some of that in the 30s was offered by the Mono Inn. Up north of us, here's some things that were going on in this special year, 1926. It was the sesquicentennial, the 150th anniversary of the United States, 1776, of course, we're looking at. The Roaring Twenties, the economy was doing well then, up until 1929, when the Great Depression would start. Calvin Coolidge was the president in 26. The US Route 66 have been hearing a lot in the news that they're celebrating their centennial of the highway, of the establishment, the designation of US Route 66 across the country, from California across to the east. The Model T was the most popular car. There were lots of different kinds of cars back then, as there are today. It was replaced in 1927 by the Model A. And the number is that there were 19 million cars in the U.S. that are back in that year. This person, by the way, the caption on the back of this photo is that this is Sylvester, I forgot her first name. Alice Sylvester standing in front of her flivver, another name for a Model T. Okay, so one more thing to set up why this was the timing to establish this town. And if you read Bob Marks's book, you will get the full story of what I'm going to say here. But in the 1920s, in the years just prior to 1926, the Northern Sierras Power Company. If you're one of those people who kind of don't like to hear that word Sierras said that way, but this is the formal name of this company. Plant number one was completed in 1924 up at the head of Levi Canyon. It's called the Pool Plant, after the engineer that was involved. There were a couple more plants that were that was plant number one. Plant number three was built in along Levine Creek as a place to a little smaller dam was built there as an intake point. And all of this was heading downhill towards the plant in where the town was about to start becoming. That plant, I have a picture a little later on, but today, after being a power plant for a while, it became what it is today, which is a station, transfer station for electricity. And of course, this all became the operation of Southern California Edison at the time. And all kinds of things were going on with this. Bob's book does a great storytelling on this. But one of the things was that the folks behind these hydroelectric plants, these and the ones over on Rush Creek, wanted to control the water of the basin. Does this sound familiar? There would be a whole lot more stuff long before we get into the period of the 30s when Los Angeles came in and started their work to divert the streams. J.S. Kane and his partners in these power companies started buying up the ranch lands, the homesteads that were where the water was, where there were, and of course most of them were close to water because they needed it for irrigation for their ranching operations. And so some of these people left the area after they got bought out, and others, like the founder of this town, had a different vision that, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to subdivide this flat up in the hill. That there had been a few things going on right here where the town is now. But the local moniker for the area was that it was Poverty Flats. Because these a couple of there's a meat market in the store, there was a struggling kind of a place. You notice in my text there, it mentions that the store was turned over, Ed Bergen turned it over to his son-in-law, Glenn Matley. And that Matley name is the key here. Chris Matley, where my arrow go here. This is the guy who really started this. He actually bought the land on the flats that would become his subdivision. He bought it in 1922, but that wasn't the beginning of the town. He had to do the whole thing to create a subdivision. And 1926 is when that happened. He put the paperwork in first with a proposed name of Lakeview. The post office said, no, there is a Lakeview in California. And so the next choice was, and I've pointed out that the name Levining was in right close by, right over there. That Levining Rancho is just right at the bottom of the hill over there, right at the junction of today of 395 and 120 West. Anyway, so it became Levining, and it was spelled the way you see, Lee with no space, Bining, until the 1953 when the post office changed it again. They stepped in and said, no, it should be two words. And so the first year, their first lots were 10 lots sold in that first year. And they went to Margaret Calhoun. The Calhoun name is one of the key names in the early businesses. Guy Carrington, I'll show you some pictures later, one of the Carrington descendants. A couple of Hesses, Bill and Gus Hess, and Peter Gilly. And here's that map. it's hard to read the date on this, but I think it's, if you see it right, it says October, I believe, 6th, 1926. The person who wrote this had a funny way of not closing the loops on the letters and numbers. That the county clerk. And there's the map. A couple things are pretty familiar here, and some other things have changed. They right away in the subdivision, they outlined that there would be school lots dedicated to schools. But that isn't right where they are today. Ended up being farther back to the west. But the names are mostly the right, Mono Lake Avenue, First, Second, Third, and Fourth Streets. This one's interesting, Leviningsville Road, which is now Levining, and they took the ville out of that part of it. So anyway, that happened, and lots started to be sold, and that's why we're celebrating 100 years now for this town of Levining, because this was the beginning of it. Here in our community center, I'm staring behind the people. This picture is great big on the wall. It was from a postcard, little postcard, but blew up very nicely because it was a Fraser's photo, and he did stuff in real high resolution. This was taken the next year, and within a year, a whole lot of construction had gone on, but only a limited number of businesses. The label on the postcard was that this was Lakeview Camp, and it's not that the town was called Lakeview Camp. It's that the thing you see the most in this picture is Lakeview Camp itself. These cabins in the right lower portion of the picture are rental cabins, and that's the area that would later become, and is today's Lakeview Lodge. I'll show you some of how that developed. There's also one of the oldest buildings that's still operating in the way it was meant to be is this one right here with all of these rooms. What is that? That's the El Mono Hotel at the time. And I'll show you a picture of how it looked back then. It was built by Peter Gilly. I mentioned his name earlier. And I'll get to the El Mono in a second. The main partner at the beginning with Chris Matley was Gus Hess. And Gus had been running a garage and gas station up at the Tioga Lodge. Chris Matley knew that this town was really going to be built around travelers and cars. So he talked Gus he gave him a couple of lots and talked him into setting up the first gas station garage here in the new town. This is Gus and his wife, Lula Charlie Hess. Lula is Connecticut local. Her family goes forever back in the Mono Basin, very important family, and quite a woman. Gus was quite a guy. They together were one of sort of the first key people in this town, along with the Matleys. Lula was a basket weaver, and one of her and she and her sisters and cousins were incredible basket makers. We have some of her materials in the museum on display, donated by the Hess family. So Gus and Lula Hess had raised their kids, and those kids became important in the history of this town also. This is Bill, who's Gus's brother, at the garage, and there's the school bus. I love it. So think about, now at this time, there still was a one-room schoolhouse that had been operating in the North Basin, up towards today, it would be up Cemetery Road and the Thompson Ranch area, which became the county park up there. That building, that one-room schoolhouse, was going to continue to operate for a little while, even though the Matleys really wanted the local kids in the town to have school. And so they developed the school lots, the school buildings, and school bus. And in a few years, about a decade, it took, all of the schools were consolidated into the town of Levining. Here we go, El Mono Hotel, built in 1927, so a year into this history. That is Peter Dilly on the left side, standing there with a couple of his children, Rosemary and Peter. And if you're, you know this town, look at what you see there. You see the highway, a dirt road. It actually, at this point, we would think of that as Highway 395. But what it did is it curved down, it right there where we make the turn onto this road that we're outside of us, Matley Avenue. That's where this road was heading in those days. And there was a restaurant, there was a dentist's office and a barber shop inside of the El Mono Hotel.
And it was the same guy too, no.
So the years go by, and one way to tell that is look at the cars on the left. Cars are starting to look differently. This is some time later. Here's the list of owners. Here, Conway, Morris Booley, and for 30 years, Roger Kelly. And today, Kelly Cashman, and she also operates the Lottie Da Cafe in the lobby. And have you seen the cowboy that's in this picture? Right in the middle, in the front, next to the dining room sign. You see that little cowboy with his, he's got his little holster with a gun there on his gun.
It's a little kid.
Yeah, a little kid, right there, right there.
Little kid on it. Look at the El Mono, it doesn't look that different.
No, it doesn't.
So what's really changed is the front that has an overhanging porch now, and
Trees.
yeah, well, of course, the vegetation, the garden around it, yeah. And you know what, this whole town, all these old pictures, there's not many trees and they will come. There was this is again 1927, the Calhouns had some early lots and they established a store and a post office inside their place and a bakery. They say that the donuts were really good. This is a few years later, 1932, and you see the picture on the left, there's a cutoff sign that says Lakeview Camp. That's where Lakeview was built beyond to the south there. There's a bakery sign there, the Levining Bakery, and there's a market. That this is where the market still exists today in the town. The Mono Market it's called today. And a taller building off in the distance, I'll show you close up in a moment. That was where the Calhouns had their operation. William Banta, that's an important name that showed up. This is him. He had been bringing produce up from the Owens Valley, from Bishop, for quite some number of years. And he ended up acquiring the store and the Lakeview Camp. And then he would sell the store, and the Banta family, 4 generations, have managed what became Lakeview Lodge. So here we jump a few years ahead. We've got the Lakeview Camp office on the left, in the winter, obviously. And the Levining Market now is what the name is being there. And as I said, 4 generations of Bantas that have run the camp, which became the motel. Still operating, Tim Banta there. So here's Bill Banta, Willie Banta, Pop Banta, as the years went by, he became called. He's on the left, Joe Merrill, and then Harry posing there on the right, because these guys were together managing the market. And Harry would end up buying out the Bantas eventually, and it would be his market. There's a connection here again with the Kuzetica. Harry married Elma Hess, the daughter of Gus and Lula, and he and his sons that they raised were very much proud of their Kuzetica heritage. And most of these people are gone now, but they came. The Labors were regular contributors to the Historical Society's events and activities. They played the flute. If you go in the visitor center, the scenic area visitor center, take a look at the display about the house, and it shows some figures of women working on baskets inside of it. And if you listen, there's a choir. That's both of them labor boys. They were boys that both of them were involved in that. So the market was owned by Chris Lisa, who was another person who was very important to this society for years. Until 2022, and a few years ago, he sold to Sam Al, this is Harry Believer in the market, and I wanted you to see the richness of this market. Realize now, this is, in the 30s, there was not a supermarket in the whole region. They weren't even happening yet. Mammoth didn't amount to much yet. And a lot of us go and shop in the markets in Mammoth these days, or maybe make a longer trip to other places. You didn't have to do that. It was brought to you in this wonderful little markets, these stores.
And that produce was grown in Bishop.
Yeah, this is Owens Valley produce, and we had yet to completely wipe that out. Although by the 30s, those were the years when LA completed their acquisition of land down there, and things did change down there. So this is in the museum. This is the meat scale, the scale in the market at one time, and is now in the museum. The reason there's a baby on there, if you could read that small print in the display, we were told that the Blavers were very good about letting newborns or people who had young infants and wanted to track their weight and how they're doing. And so we've got an example of that line here. The meat scale for the baby. So moving down the road here, this is actually skipping backwards in time a little bit into the 20s again. The building on the right that is kind of overexposed, it has the roof that zigzags, came out of Bodie and was brought down by the Calhouns. And the smaller building to the left was where they did their bakery, and Henry Calhoun was the first town postmaster. And I have a list here in a moment of all the different postmasters up to the 50s. The Calhouns then would later lease that building. This is the same building with a better exposure. You can see that kind of false front look to it from Bodie. They leased it to Bill Fuller, and there was a cafe there called Says Bill's. Great name. And then he sold, that was a lease. And then they sold the building to Giulio Zunino. And in 1940, this would become the Giulio's Sierra Cafe. And everybody know what building we're talking about? What is it today?
Mona Lake Committee.
No, not the Mona Lake Committee. This is Nice Place. There's been a restaurant. There's been a restaurant cafe right there on that corner all up through till today, just different names and different looks. The building's like changed there. Postmasters. The top of the list here, we see Calhoun. Down at the bottom of this list, in the 1950s, was Roberta Perenick. And I don't know how many of you remember the Perenicks. Yeah, we got some old timers over in there in the room. I wish Tom and Dan Perenick could be here today. They're not in the area now, and health is an issue for part of that. But real fixtures in the town of Levining. Here's what it looks like, of course, today. Very much a center of things, but it had moved around. And I'll show you a couple of those locations besides the Calhoun place here in a minute. So moving on down the street, going farther north in that line, is another building that has that same general look. It came out of Bodie, and it had the name the Nevada Cafe, but people called it Bodie Mike's because Mike Lazovich was its owner, and he and his wife, ran Bodie Mike's, and today it's still under that name next door to the Nicely's restaurant. And Nancy Pinizzaro was running Bodie Mike's today, it won't open for a while. The weather has to be good because while it has a bar inside and has seating inside, it's really nice to sit out at front door and eat their good stuff. Here is Edna Nicely. Jim and Edna ran the cafe after they bought that site from Giulio's Zanino. This was 1965, so we jumped way forward here. We'll move back in time in a bit. And I've got a completely different, I wish Nancy Pinozzato was here, because she's the one today who's the owner and operator of Nicely's and Bodie Mike's. So the next building down also has that similar look. So you can see that they were all kind of transported in to become part of this function in this new town. This one has the sign says Levining Club, but it was more often apparently called Hess Hall. And this is owned by Gus Hess and the Hess family in the late 1930s. It's interesting, right? That's those years were the Depression years before World War II. Things were tough all around the country, but Levining had a surge of business and some real big years where, and it was because the Department of Water and Power had as many as 1,000 workers brought into the area to build the aqueduct diversion tunnel and the facilities, the Grant Dam, because the Depression brought along the CCs, the Conservation Corps, and there were camps in these hills, and those boys on the weekends and Saturday night, things got really wild around the saloons and restaurants and parlors and all of the Levining. Dances occurred. For $1, you could get in there as a couple. This is the building that today is the building of the Mono Lake Committee, where the information center is. And as you can see back then, there were no sidewalks and you could drive right up and park right up next to these buildings. So inside, the band was primarily built from the Hesses themselves, the talented musicians of the Hess family. The woman here on the left is Elma, the lady who married Harry Claver. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. She is the sister of Augie Hess, who many of you know, I hope. Augie is one of our, here we are celebrating 100 years of the town. Augie was a centenarian himself. When he died a few years ago, he was 100 and, Janet, what, 3?
Almost 104.
Almost 104. I don't even know much about, I don't know anything about Mrs. Gilvery, but Harriet Hess is Augie's wife, and she's there playing the accordion. So Augie was a trumpet player, and Elma there's got a clarinet, and they would sometimes, there are some pictures where there were 7 members of the band and other members from the community that were joining in. So let's take a look here. We've gotten up to 1937. Keep things moving here. And all of a sudden, all of those, that original plot map didn't have any of these names. Now they're all filled in. And if you glance through them, you see some of these names we've been talking about, including the S's, Currys, and Gillies, and let's see. I need to look at it big. Where was I looking for? Oh, Matley's. The Matley house up there across from Sunday would be where the church is. Donnelly, a lot of names. What you didn't see at first, in the first map, was anything shown as lots on the east side of the highway. But notice in this drawing now, they've gone ahead and developed places for on the other side of the highway along the route there. And this doesn't really show you the development that would come like where Lakeview Lodge is further to that. Partly because what happened is there was federal land, Forest Service land, at that end of what became the town. And it took quite a while for negotiations before the owners of like Lakeview Lodge and the other businesses down there could get their title to their property and not be leasing federal land. So anyway, things were developing, things were changing. And one of the changes I mentioned earlier is trees. And here's a similar picture to that one from back in 1927. This is 1941, so right at the beginning years of World War II. You can still pick out, if you look close, look for these lines of the windows and the El Mono Hotel there. Lakeview Lodge cabins are now kind of disappeared into the forest here, a jungle of trees that have. What you don't see, things, oh, here's the schools. So now we've got the schools that are developed here. There's all kinds of residences there. You don't see a whole lot of development along the road, along the highway yet, beyond the central core, the old stuff in that whole town. But that's coming. So we got to talk about gas stations. There were so many gas stations. This was a Standard Oil gas station on the east side of the road. This is a view from the west side of the road. And this obviously was Texaco gas. And if you, well, it comes later, there's another one. This is at the building here that had the gas pumps was where Calhoun's modern cabins were. Remember the Calhoun's? They came in and developed a bakery and a lot of things. There's a jail in this, but it was only a jail for the roaring 30s, a crazy time in the town. This building right in the middle of the little building, Don Banta told me about how they had used it as a jail, and then once it stopped being used that way, he was the leader of a local Boy Scout troop, and they met in there. But so what is there today? And the Honia's garage there across the street. This thing's has changed some. This is the area where the fire station is. Monocone's not down there yet. A number of things are still going to happen, but I wanted to focus on these gas stations here. On the east side of the highway, about the same time, this is 1955. The first building that you see there when you peer in at the sign is the Richfield gas station. Who remembers that there was such a thing as Richfield gas? Nobody? Somebody, there's one. Okay, I can remember that, but I'm an old guy. There's a sporting goods store that should look familiar. It's the same building that when we first came here, when I came here, not till the 1980s, it was the Bell's Sporting Goods, and now it's the Beaver Sporting Goods. This is what's still operating from right there. And beyond that, some things have changed considerably, but there was a gas station, that was the Hess Garage. And now there's a hotel and some development in that in the town. And this information here is that it took till 1967. Don Banta said it was an incredibly long thing, but that was very gratifying when they finally were able to have title to their property and not just lease it from the Forest Service. It involved a land exchange to make that happen. So the Richfield gas station became Standard Oil Station eventually. Claude Walburn. On the other side of the street, over where the Blue Sky Motel is, would be, there's a Mobile Gas, a Flying Horse. There's Gulf.
$7.
You guys remember these names of gas stations? There were so many different ones before they consolidated. And then down the way, there's a motel, and that's where Murphy's is today. This is Augie and Harriet Hess. And that Gus was the one who first established the garage and the gas operation in town. This is the day they opened their standard station, the Chevron, which is in the location where it is today.
How much was the gas?
I don't know. I remember in my life it was 23 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Less than 30 cents a gallon.
So, because of this, our connection as a junction of important highways going important places, every year, and because of the recreation that came with the travelers, every year back in the day, when the Tioga Pass opened, they would celebrate with a community fish fry. And, what I've always wondered about is how they scheduled it. Because the opening of Tioga Pass has varied so much in the time I've been in this community. But anyway, they would do it, they would get together once it opened and do a community fish fry. I heard a noise just now from the Lundy folks, and I know that there's some talk about some Lundy Fish Derby type community fish stuff.
We're admiring that the fish is so big and they.
Look at the size of it.
I
Yeah, and there, and the fish farms of the local area hadn't come about yet, so, yeah. So, so as the decades rolled by and we had this thirties and then things slowed down. When the construction ended in 1940, essentially DWP, all of those families and folks, most of them left the area. And those other, Conservation Corps folks and others. There were buildings though in the construction camps that LA had built. And they were, structurally good buildings, and a number of them became town buildings, or were moved and then modified or remodeled. If you look behind this building on the wheels, you can see that word garage. That's the Hess Garage down at the south end of town. These are two of the buildings, or the core of these buildings. These churches came from West Florida. Both the Community Presbyterian Church and the Catholic Church. Okay, some other old stuff on the east side of the highway. Can you tell what era, what decade we're looking at now from the fins on that car?
50s.
Yeah, 50s. Kellogg's Cafe.
Where's Fairlane Station Wagon?
Yeah, I wish Carrie Kellogg was here, but to talk about this a little bit. But the Kellogg's, some generations involved in the Kellogg's and their role here, and there was a more than one cafe that would be developed in this building. And today it's it is boarded up, owned by the Pinizzotto family. But this is the building where on the sides of it, there's murals that were done a few years ago. Or this is the building next to the next building that would come in, where the murals were. And I'll show you some about that. Does anybody know where Sink's Cafe was? Any in this group? I've got to get some of the old timers to tell me. I'm not sure. I think it may have been in that building I just showed you, but I'm not sure. But I love all the little messages about what they offered and what you should come and do in this area here. It's another cafe. And I love this big sign behind these. Now, this is a display in the museum, but I would love to know what was unique about the French toast. Who knows what that means? It may make you want to try it. I guess that's different.
They gave it to me with French
So this picture was taken in 1950. And in the foreground left is that power plant that became an Edison power plant, but it had been built way back in 1924, I think it was, or 23, and was that plant number 2 in that series for the Sierra's Power Company, Southern Sierra's Power Company. And off to the right side of the picture, by 1950, it had been operating for about a decade at that point, was the mill for the pumice plant out of the Mono craters. And that would continue to operate for I looked it up, it's 66 years until they've shut down now. It's not active now. Schools. So this is that one-room schoolhouse that I mentioned was operating up by Thompson Ranch until 1926. Then it was turned into the building, residence for different people at different times, but it was finally threatened with destruction because it's on land that was acquired by Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. They were gonna probably burn it or tear it down. So it was rescued and it was moved in 1987. Here's a clip taken from the video that Don Banta shot of them moving that schoolhouse down the highway to where it sits today, and that's where our history museum is since 1987. And it's a in itself, it's a centenarian, it's more than 100 years old. And, yeah, special building, special location now with things. Other schools though in town, this is the old school building, it's changed over by where the elementary school is today. Both the elementary and grades up through eighth grade, basically, and for a time in the early years before World War II, they were doing all the way high school. But people like Lily Matthew, who's was a student here, went down to in her years, she's 103 now. She she had to go to Bishop. She went down there to go to finish high school after the first eighth grade years. Some pictures of some of the early classes and years. This is 1931, and things hadn't boomed yet with that. Remember, I said the 30s became a boom time, mostly the second half of the 30s. This is 1936. And most of the extra numbers here have a relationship to the LA Department of Water Power, the families that came into the region. And they would be bussed in. But as the years went by, students from the small little community of Mammoth would be bussed into here to go to school in the town in school in Levining, and from other, the outlying areas around here. Here's a high school paper called the High Sierra High. In 1939, Lily Matthew, I just talked about, she was the editor of this paper. And what I put it in for mostly is because of the ads. I love that. Here's the Hess Garage, winter supplies. And dairies, a couple of the dairies that were active, and the Lee Vining Market, one of the very first businesses of the town, owned here by Banta and Labor. And on display in the museum, we've got some another company, a Lee Vining dairy. And I'm sorry, yeah, no, this would be a milk bottle from neither of these dairies are called Lee Vining Dairy from these are the Mono Lake and the Conway Dairy. So Conway Ranch, right? Here's Lily growing up in the Basin. Lily, quite the athlete, quite the skier. Yeah, I'm hoping she can be with us on August 29th if she's still with us. And I hope she can come out if possible. She doesn't get out and about now. And I want to put a tiara or something on her head and honor her as the queen of the day. She's still with us. 1942, high school girls. What else? Why aren't there boys here? What was happening in 42?
World War II.
Yeah, that may be why. I don't know if that's the answer to why. If it's just this gathering of the female students, but yeah. So we've got Lee Vining High School as we know it today, constructed in 1962. And at first, again, I was talking to David Dorr, who graduated from this high school, and he said up until the 70s, when the Mammoth High School, when the Mammoth schools went their own way, they were all, David's graduating class, he said, was 96. And, we haven't seen that in a long time. I wanted to show you this detail from this is the west-facing wall of the library building that's next to the high school. And back in 2017, a mural was painted on there. Students from the school, following directions from their teacher, created this mural with a tiger, with the Lee Vining tigers. What are you guys laughing about?
I was laughing because one of my cars is in the picture.
Yeah.
Oh,
The high school reunion, on the weekend of the June Lake Fireman's Barbecue.
yeah. I I gotta tell you, when the centennial, when we became aware that we were going to celebrate the 100 years of the town, I thought, well, wouldn't it be appropriate if this mural that got painted over in 2018, kind of by mistake. Yeah, it was a job given to repaint the building, and they took the mural away. There's people I've been talking to say, boy, we really need if we could get a mural of something back. And I talked to someone today who said, my husband's an artist, and anyway, maybe, I think maybe the folks who graduated from Levine Union High School might consider supporting the this mural back. It's not essential to the centennial, but there would be a neat reason to do it this year. Other things along in the town, we have two big maintenance yards that are very active, the Caltrans maintenance yard and Mono County road shop. And they have a lot of work to do. They keep the roads in various kinds of paved and dirt roads going year round, but they also have all that snow in the winter to deal with. So I'm jumping back here, some old historic winter scenes here in downtown. Those cars mean that we're not in the 20s anymore here, that we're looking into maybe the 30s. This picture Don Banta gave me, it's 1969. That was you may know it was a record snowfall in the Sierra that year. So the story of this guy, he was part of a group of young men who, one of them took this picture and then gave it to Tom Banta. I love the happy motoring in the background. They got here in time for the storm. They got snowed in. They couldn't leave. They ran out of money. Don started feeding them. And this great picture came out. So anyway, they did the snow, something to keep in mind. The snow comes and the snow goes. Snow again. The 1953 Levine High School ski team. One of the places that they skied was right out back of the school, up on the hill. That's where this photo on the left is. But you can still go out there and see where the poles are that help support this lift. They took the skiers up the hill and then they raced downhill. And they won. They would go up into the Tahoe area and compete against high school ski teams up there. And a couple of important names here. There's a Hess on the left in the back row. There's a Harry Believer Jr. is this tall guy, a fourth one from the left in the back row. And the guy next to him, even taller, is Frank Cassidy. And I wanted Frank to be here, but they've got some health things tonight. But I hope they're listening right now and watching this on Zoom. And kneeling in front is Don Banta, looking awfully young. I never saw him this young, but I wasn't here in 1953. I was 3 years old. And he's holding a championship trophy. So the Cassidys, I want to talk about them because Frank has been on the board of trustees of our society. And he graduated from Levine High School. His father, Frank Cassidy Sr., was the manager of the Log Cabin Mine, which is way up above the town. You can't see it from in town. You have to get back a ways, but you can kind of see where the ridge is. And it actually, the claim established there for gold mining way back in 1890, but Frank Cassidy Sr. was hired to come in and manage the operating mine. It was still operating in the 1930s, and some of those miners would be some of those folks partying in town and on the Saturday night in the 30s. And then World War II, the government actually shut down the gold production, and that was the last production years. But his father continued to be the caretaker, and so the Cassidy family was one of the here in the 1950s. Baseball. What's that got to do with the town? This has been a baseball town for decades, for a long time. Augie Hess is the tallest guy in this picture. He was the coach and player, and the L is for Levining. This is in the 50s, and they were forced to be reckoned with, this team. The word was that they would go up to Bridgeport. We know these things because it was reported in the newspaper. The Levining boys whomped the boys in Bridgeport yesterday, that kind of thing. And they would go south and play. They were some really impressive ball players. Baseball's still happening. I took this picture last week. Little leaguers out in the field, and take a look across to right field and that billboard out there. And you see Woody Woodpecker, and this is called Walter Lance Field. Walter Lance lived on June Lake, on the Silver Lake area. He was, this field is dedicated to him, but also he was a supporter. And I love this picture. I got it just right. This guy's winding up to the throw, and who knows what happened in the next second. And that umpire means a lot to me. That's my son. So other things that are events of the town, Mark Twain Days got started by the Mona Lynn back in the 30s. As an annual event to draw people into the area, and different things were done, for town celebrations and boat races and all kinds of things. This is 1991. So there were a number of parades for the Mark Twain Days that happened right here in the town, in a challenging place to do it. You had to stop traffic on one of the lanes going into town. You got judges here for the various floats. This is the guy that ran the US pumice plant, Floyd Griffin. And this is Eileen. Eileen and Cedar were some of the founders of the Mono Basin Historical Society.
That's Eileen and Steve.
What?
That's Eileen and Steve.
That's Eileen, that's not Cedar. That is, this is Alkali. This is
That's
Richard Katasha, who gave us a talk a few months ago about some things. So, yeah, anyway, there's some things that's not happening now, but we had to talk about, should we do a parade there at the Centennial? We're gonna do a fair and keep it all right in. In recent decades, the community has become more and more a population where the Hispanic Latino community is a big factor. These are some of the students in the community garden there by the school, the high school. I was looking for some pictures just to help tell the story and to point it out. This is one of the quinceanera parties that happened not too long ago. Sarah Taylor, their school teacher, gave me that picture. And this is last night right here. That Fiesta banner was on that wall over here. We did Fiesta Bingo last night, and the room was full. And anyway, that's I just need to recognize it. This is part of our community, and it's become a real important part of our community. 1978 is when the Mono Lake Committee was established and came to Lee Vining because of Mono Lake and the problems at the time with Mono. The committee is in what used to be the Hess Hall, that place where the dances used to be. That's where they developed their information center, and lots always going on with this, and it's still an unsettled battle. This picture, I'm gonna look, first of all, take a look at the town, the street profile in the background. There's an interesting car. What is that? It's a VW Bug, Volkswagen Bug. This is the blue, at the time called the Blue Skies Motel. There's that gas station sign there. But what's going on there? This is the building across the way that is now boarded up, that has the murals on it, the Valor murals. And back in 1982, this is where the first office was for the Mono Lake Toothless State Reserve. And now that you can see their faces, these are people that, this is me, and not wearing in my uniform because I didn't get one at grungy and all this work we were doing, I think. That's Don Banta next to me. And that's his loader where he lifted us up into the air with this thing to install it. And that guy on the left, who is that? Anybody know? David Gaines. Yeah, and so the State Reserve was just getting started. Janet and I were the rangers at the time and sharing that job. And I gotta tell you, I painted this sign on a piece of plywood. We would get metal signs eventually, the formal kind of thing that you do in a park, but we needed a sign now. And so we did it. We just took care of making our own stuff. And so put it up there that day in July, 1982. The Mono Basin National Forest Scenic Area was established in 1986, I think it was, and the visitor center that is a very big part of our townscape now opened in 1992. And
Wait, go back a second.
go back
We think that's Hillary Hansen.
right here, walking in a white t-shirt. Yeah, maybe. I wish she was here. We could can ask her, and maybe she zoomed in and we can find out. Yeah, 1992. There was a big ribbon cutting, lots of ceremony, and you know, it will be open. It will be open by the late May for sure. And operating. Forest Service is struggling for a lot of reasons right now. Here we are in this building, which is not very old in this town. Today it's called the Mono Lake Indian and Leavine Community Center. The Cosetica tribes are right behind us here in this building. And well, of course, lots of events happen here, like the one last night, the one right tonight. And I wanted to just, you know, again, the Cosetica folk are, you know, the town is something that sort of happened to them, you might say. And yet they were intimately involved. I've talked to you about the Hesses and the Bladers, and there are others. The Sam family came, and they were one of the program was about the Sam family history for the Historical Society just a couple of years ago. Oh my gosh, it's 6 years ago. Hard to believe. So here we are, about done, looking straight down on the town. This is where what we've got today going. The community, the high school's right here. The Hess Park is going to be full of people on August 29th. We hope celebrating this long history. And these posters are going up around the town all through the summer that we hoping to publicize things. We're gonna have live music, Tom Bopp from Yosemite, the Bishop Jazz Combo, the Bodie 601 Trio, a local band right here from around here. And I'm gonna click down here and let you listen for a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, pack up the family, point your motor north. You follow the road where the Sierra meets the sky. The town of Levine is celebrating 100 years. And everyone's invited to the community fair. Way up where the mountains touch the sky, on a lake shining nearby. There's a little town where the road winds in. They call it Levine. Travelers rolling through the Model A's a pioneer cheers. Show the pass to the desert floor. That old highway leads you to the door. Swing up Highway 39, where the mountain winds run wild. You find his way by the shore, the Sierra Basin. Come along, don't be late. August 29th. Day. 100 years and the town still sings, come celebrate Levine. Ladies and gentlemen.
What? That's enough.
Beautiful.
That is, I gotta tell you something about the year 2026. That was produced by a friend from the Model A Club that's coming with artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Oh.
Did you say was that Russ or Tom Bopp that made that song?
No, that you didn't hear what I just said.
I'm sorry, no.
It's artificial intelligence. It's not a real person.
Oh.
This guy from the Model A Club just one day he sent me that. And I said,
Wow.
where did that come from? Like you did. And that's the answer. So here's the last slide for my program. I want to thank you for coming tonight. We are going to do a time capsule, and my request to everyone who has a connection with this town is to think if there's something you would like to get into a time capsule to be opened in the distant future. You know, it could be many different kinds of things. It can't be something that requires a battery. Not because it might not work back then, but of course it won't, but because batteries can cause problems inside of this capsule. They break down and they have chemicals and things. Everything that we put in there will be protected with artifact proper sleeves and coverings and packaged. And there'll come a day where someone is going to go, like I would like to go, what if they'd done this in 1926 and we could open it this year and see what they had to tell us or show us. Well, that's what we're going to be doing with our time capsule. And I would invite you to be part of it. So keep that in mind. And I'm done. Thank you very much for We have people out there in Zoom land. Let me
Now,
start
if you
here in
wanna
the room.
punch complete strangers in
Any
the
questions
stomach, you gotta
or
take
any contributions to this?
So do we know how much a lot cost in 1926?
No. Oh, you know, I think there may be some information on that, but I don't know it right now. Scanning it. Not sure what, I think it was like $100.
Oh,
But,
So there's, some of the valuations of the houses are 50, 75, et cetera, dollars. I think a couple of them, Chris Batley's house was valued at $2,000. And I think the Hess operation was valued at $3,500. So, you know, it's not large numbers.
How much did tax on move a hash or gourd?
any other questions? Anybody else want to contribute anything? Okay, thanks a lot. And, this is the year. I gotta tell you, there's going to be 2 celebrations for the centennial. We just talked this morning at the Chamber of Commerce. And we decided, there's a grant that's being offered to us from, that is to put on a concert. And we're gonna do a concert in the park, it looks like, if everything comes together, October 3rd. And because it's a centennial year, we'll make it a centennial concert. Why not? But the Chamber of Commerce is just getting that going, just came up today.
That's great.
So, thanks a lot.
Dave.
Yeah. Rich, do you have any, chat questions or no?
Well, there are no questions from staff, from chat, just accolades. Barry McPherson does offer the great presentation. Loved growing up on the Mono Inn property and attending Lee Vining schools for 12 years. My mother, Virginia, was a substitute teacher, and my father, Wallace R., was instrumental in getting the new high school built.
Great.
And Kevin
Somebody
Kay
says-
offers, how about a square dance at the Centennial?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to do that in the fair on August 29th, but there is probably gonna be dancing at the concert in October. Maybe we should do another day and do a square dance. Good idea. I'd love to do something. Thank you all out there in Zoom land.
Bravo, Dave.
All right.
Good night.
Okay, good night.
I'm done for the day.